Well, I want to wish everybody a warm good morning wherever you are on this Monday in June. I guess it's our last Monday in June.
Wow.
Next week is July 4th, which is an American holiday, but we will continue meeting. I'm looking forward to the continued discussion of Mensch. I was thinking this morning about how can I be a mensch to myself? And I guess that's another way of another direction. Because how can I be a mensch to somebody else unless I'm that to myself? So maybe that will come into the conversation today. I don't know. But I think it's just because of everything that's happening in the world. I find myself challenged, irritable, and maybe not being so mensch-like to myself. And how can I be that way in the world if these challenges are happening for myself? So anyways, I'm just looking forward to whatever unfolds today organically. And I just want to thank Steve for being here with us and continuing our conversation.
Thank you, Melinda. Sort of picking up on that, on some of the conversation that was that was going on just as people were finding their way in to our time together. We were talking a little bit about what that particular term Mensch means, and I may be a morning person, but I'm terrible at names first thing in the morning. So there was somebody who typed into the chat a definition and one of the definition from the particular dictionary, Arnold it was a sort of a decent, upstanding person, sort of. That was the definition of that particular term, and what I like to do is think about, and it's focusing and thinking at the edge kind of way. I like to think about the term as being, term of course as having a history and having definitions and items underneath it of what it means. But I also think of it as a term that is sort of like the label on a box in some kind of way of qualities and virtues and strengths, and that there can be that it's something that's meaningful to me because of my history and my Jewish cultural background and the way that and such. But the particular kinds of qualities that may go within it are human qualities and virtues and strengths, and so that there can be other kinds of names that are given by other cultures to that box of that box of qualities or strengths. So I just wanted to think about taking that particular word and being and it's not crazy glued for me on the box. It's Velcroed in some kind of way, and so I kind of put it over there, and that has resonance for me. I'm also, as I think I mentioned last time, very curious about character ideals and terminologies in other languages and in other cultures. I'm very interested in that, in learning more about that. So that's my kind of intro, and along that line, around in kind of following up on many of you. I can see we're here last time, and some of you weren't, and So what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of bringing together. So around, I was talking about having an emergence for myself of a phrase called that has become a kind of a guiding blueprint phrase for me, which is menching. I call it menching forward, and it brings together a certain kind of character quality and quality package, if you will, that I have inherited and that I'm looking into and exploring in relationship to, in sense, my ancestral grandparents kind of thing, and focusing and making inherited virtues personal in some kind of way. So that's kind of what I was talking about before. So back to the idea of different kinds of names to put on things. And this is a story, and it does about a personal story. About 10 or 12 years ago, I had I can see that Yoka's here, and I think I shared that with you, Yoka. I had I had a period of time where I kept where when I was with people, I kept and I saw something that I admired. I kept saying, and after a while it became somewhat obnoxious. I kept saying, "Dude," when I saw something that I admired in some kind of way. So back to the Big Lebowski. But so I kept doing that over and over again, and there were different kinds of things that I would do that kind of dude with, and so this is where the male part, and I try to find a way to a term to use that implies dude with the best I could come up with be dudette in some way or another, but something like that. What was bringing admiration for me would be both with non-gendered. So what I did was I put together an acronym, and the acronym was D was for decency. So it fits what Arnold was putting into the chat around that definition of mensch. So D for decency, U for understanding, D, the other D for dedication or devotion, and the E for the final E for engagement. And so it became kind of like a formula, and it gave me some kind of appreciation about what these qualities were that I was admiring, and maybe and they were qualities in some kind of way of qualities or traits of character in some way or another, or character strengths. And so can put on the box. For me, sometimes I put on the box mensch, and then of various qualities, and other times I will say dude or dudette or something like that. But from other and of course other people may put other things in other cultures, words, and that kind of thing. So I was also saying is that notion of forward is what I put it. It became a life motto in some way, and I'm going to just give me a sec here. They're going to use other words. So motto could be motto can be a saying of some sort, a saying, a phrase. It can be like a slogan. It can be a proverb, and so it's a kind of a shorthand way. For me, it started off as only a couple of words, but it can be a phrase, and it can be a phrase that is that in some kind of way, that's how I put it. In some kind of way inspires or guides or energizes or motivates or challenges, in kind of in psychological theory terms, and I don't know how much it's used these days. It can be kind of like an ego ideal in some kind of way, and it can serve those kind of those functions. And also, Melinda was saying last time that we met, it can provide an aim, and so these are kind of functions of it, and as a way of kind of navigating our life. So as I was thinking about this presentation, I kind of Googled motto, and I ran into somebody who had written something, and she had used the term life motto. So that's what I'm thinking about right now in terms of mentioning forward for me as a life model, but there are all kinds of specific situations. The other thing that I would say would be that the sources for something that can be like an inspiring and guiding phrase can be inherited sources. Something I heard, something I heard my mother say, or something, or a teacher, or something that I'd read, or something that had had been passed down through the traditions of my culture, and something that inspired me through perhaps through literature, or through poetry, or through song. It's something that we've received that resonates for us, and it can have that kind of handle effect for us, with implicit meaning as well as implicit energies, or not so implicit, but implicitly meaningful energies that can help us. So there's that, and then there's also another way that a motto can emerge, and can emerge from our own life experience related to what it is that we are grappling with at a particular time. And the traditional kind of focusing, the original focusing 6 questions that Jean articulated, and then said after a while you can throw them away. But one of the initial questions was something like, what's between me and feeling, what's between me and feeling all okay, and that kind of thing. And so then then while doing focusing, and then working with that aspect of one's that one is up against, and the experience, some words or phrases or images can emerge. We've all had those kinds of experiences, and those kinds of words or phrases or images or song lyrics or poetry lyrics, whatever, sentences, they can become mottos for us. They can become those handles can be something that we can hold onto, and that can guide us in some way. And I wanted to just share one or two that that came. I had a conversation with a good friend a couple of days ago, and he had just been through some highly difficult times. He's doing well now, but had required certain kind of intensive heart surgery, and his wife had to deal with a cancer surgery and all of that kind of thing, all during the COVID thing. And he's in his late 70s, and he talked about having a phrase that emerged for him, and he wasn't quite sure even who was doing the talking, but he said that the phrase came, "Don't count your days, count your blessings," and so that has become for him it resonated a lot, and for him, and so that became a resonant guide for him. And of course, there will be times at which he can't, things get in the way of him being able to live that, but that he wants to live that. And a life motto or saying or slogan can give us that can hold those kind of values and intentions and principles for us. And then there's another one that didn't emerge from, at least didn't emerge from my particular experience, but there's a phrase that a phrase that's used. There's a particular website and a program called Conscious Eldering or Conscious Aging, and one of the phrases that they use is savoring and serving. And so it's got, so it's another example of a guiding phrase. And also for me, another inherited guiding phrase is from that so many people love the lyric from one of Leonard Cohen's songs, the lyric of forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So people can use those, varying kinds, phrases that carry resonant meaning. So it can be this combination of something that emerges from our own life, like my friends, and then it can also be something that we've inherited from somewhere. Somebody else said something and had something that resonated for them, and then we take it in and in some kind of way can make it ours, so they can combine. So I want to say just one other thing.
Steve?
And go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just sort of trying to take it. I'm just taking it all in, and just want to maybe pause for a moment. There was a lot that you shared.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering if people want to sort of take in a little bit and digest or chew it a little bit and communicate what comes for them right now before we go forward.
Thank you. Yeah. And I want to also add that it can also be, that it can also be what might bug you about the idea of having a short phrase or an image. So don't want to get in the way of that.
Steve, what was the E in dude?
Engaged.
Thank you.
And you can play with these things in lots of ways, empathically engaged, or friend of. Go ahead, Monica.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful storytelling, and just took me all the way into my story. And what came for me is a phrase that the English version of 5th grade, something like that, teacher gave me from leaving elementary school. And she was my favorite teacher, and she taught history in the most delicious way. And we studied Shakespeare, and the phrase that she gave me from Shakespeare was, "To thine own self be true, and it shall follow as the night the day. Thou can't not then be false to any man." And that was the phrase, and I love it. And at the same time, when it came up just now, there was something in me that wrestles with not liking it. And it feels almost like, I want to say, like a curse as well as a blessing. Because it just feels like I can't help it but tell the truth. And there's something difficult about that. And I guess I'm looking for help, like some kind of guidance about my guiding phrase.
Well, it strikes me very powerfully, just to say quickly that, first of all, I was kind of taken by having a grade 5 teacher who would do such a thing, and give that kind of a message. That there's a certain kind of I'm taken by the kind of the beauty and the care of that teacher. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing that I would I would say is that, just to reflect back, from me is just that, that I think these phrases, can have what they give to us, and they also have their limits and their challenges in some kind of way. And your particular one is, it's sort of got in some way embedded on your heart. And so then you're struggling, about when to put limits on it and that kind of thing. And I think all of us, with whatever ones that we've got, have to wrestle with different parts too. And it's also just, the other thing I'll say is that sometimes that there's the reality that the phrase is going to have different resonance at different times in our lives as well.
Thank you.
I can't respond to Monica directly, but it's also like a neighbor of what she said. And I'm just thinking we could almost have a whole program on just, from our childhood, what phrases or music really have guided us as we growing up. Because I can picture probably being the same age as Monica in 5th grade when the song "I Gotta Be Me," I used to blast that in the house and dance around, and it really resonated for me. And I think in one sense, I would never have thought of it being like a motto, but it's just an interesting way of looking at things and realizing that, it really spoke to me in my body. So so I just found that fascinating.
And just what you just said, Steve, that a motto would probably change as you live your life, and things for you change. And I think that's intriguing. Maybe it doesn't like completely change, but changes in very subtle ways.
And one of the things that our focusing process can do is to help us to be able to find those subtle ways in which that it can change. Sometimes they're so subtle that they're hard to find words or images for, but you kind of know something's got to be altered here in some kind of way. So the focusing can help us to find that's it. Yeah. Anyone else?
I'm thinking that perhaps we change the motto or the group of the words become changed as we live them. They take on our meaning.
Mm. Mhm.
And I'm thinking of, wish I could remember this phrase better, but about 10 years ago, I went to a meditation workshop, and there was a lovely teacher, very, very down to earth. And she talked about, say, if you're in a tough situation, it's simply a hair's breadth of a move this way or that way, making all the difference. And that comes to me often as an image, sort of, rather than the words, just the tiniest movement, making the difference between life or death, or being present or not, or being open or closed. And that often comes to me in difficult moments. So it's not so much words as I can see an image, and I see a thread, as if it's a thread's difference.
Did you say thread?
Thread, THREAD, yeah.
Hmm. Oh.
That it can be felt rather than put into words.
Mhm. So the movement in those difficult times, it becomes kind of like a handle in some way, would you say?
But yeah, and the image
And the image of that,
of
yeah.
a thread, of a kind of opening just slightly, so it's maybe not visible,
Mhm.
but felt from the inside.
Uh-huh.
That kind of thing. I may be being very vague, but the thing is, as an experience, it's very not vague.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So there's a felt meaning, felt sense that's anything but vague, but it carries you without words.
Yeah, it's a thing that makes all the difference between right or wrong, or sincerity or not sincerity.
And to just quickly say, I like how you said that. It makes all the difference. And these are things that have to do with sincerity and right and wrong, values. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Perhaps, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm still holding what Monica said, because I think I resonated a lot with that Shakespearean quote from a very, young, it may be more like in college, when I was a lit major and studied Shakespeare. And I think what I'm feeling from it is this sense, like when Monica said, it's a blessing and a curse, I think. I'm not sure, but I think that's what she said. And
yes,
like just the power of it in a young person, of having that desire to be in one's truth. And then as time passes, the responsibility of that's what I'm feeling, is so heavy, has been so heavy. And like there's a certain pressure sometimes that I've placed on myself to almost too great a degree to live up to a motto, and just the struggle around how you have this ideal, especially as a younger person, and how the struggles in life challenge that ideal. That's what's coming up for me.
So that's kind of like the curse. The curse part is that challenge and some of the pressure that it places as one sort of leaves the younger time in which when the ideal landed in some way or another. And then there's that ongoing kind of challenge around the living it in some kind of way. Yeah, like everything, I think mottos have their challenges and their limits.
And I just want to add how this challenge can also, for me, those mottos or those inspirational phrases, that they carry me forward too. So I may resonate with them at a certain moment or with a certain experience. It might not be true for my whole self at all times, but when I'm faced with a time where it's not resonating in an authentic way, in a bodily way at this moment, I know it's still true, and I know it's still an inspirational way of being that that rings true to where I am, or where I want to go, or how I want to unfold in this world. So what we named as the challenge or the curse, in a way, for me, is like a direction also, and it is a reminder, is a calling. Yeah. So it's true that at times it might not feel like, it's, I'm not feeling it, but it's still true in other ways. So I'm not sure if I'm understood, but
And what I've taken is that, and your gesture kind of also spoke it like that. So it's that kind of there's that inspirational, directional calling, and that still is a calling that is true, and sometimes feels kind of like I can go with that, and then there are other times I just don't feel it, but it's still there.
yeah.
And so then, that could be the curse or the challenge part of it. I just give you a quick phrase, and around this, which just might be using that kind of the focusing question. Well, so what's between me, at this point in time, and this? And so then there can be work with focusing in that kind of way.
Exactly.
Right.
Except that this is a motto, or a personal life motto, so it has a lot of meaning for.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
not what's between me and feeling fine, or
Yes. Yes.
What's between me and sacred in living, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. I love your pointing out or noticing the gesture, because the gesture has it all. It's really, thank you.
So there are gestures, and there are images, and there are words, and Shakespearean quotes. And anybody else have something to say before we get? I'm going to offer you an attunement soon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I wasn't really fully connecting when you were speaking, but as other people were speaking, I realized that when I was young, the phrase "free to be you and me" from Marlo Thomas in 1972, that album, really came at a formative time in my life. And I just am realizing that became an expectation. Free to be you and me became this message that I really integrated in myself. So yeah, It's interesting. Yeah, and an expectation.
Uh-huh. So it had both aspects. It inspired and it became an expectation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for a phrase that where the first word is free in there too. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
So my guiding phrase is from W.B. Yeats. Tread softly, for you tread on my dreams. It's sort of me, the other. Within our limitations, what we have, and how we can find the moment of meaning. As you said earlier, just a thread, a hint of a movement. Yeah.
What poem is that from, Katarina?
In the chat,
You put it in the chat, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have spread my
Thank
dreams
you.
under your feet, yeah.
Okay. Tread softly or gently. Anyone else? Okay.
Hi, Steve, everyone. I'm in a middle of a major life transition, and although I've had various words, mottos, prayers, and I'm so appreciating everyone sharing, that I find these days that none of them work. And that work, I don't even know what that means. But something about releasing into the greater silence and the not knowing. I guess the closest word I could get maybe is surrender. And I don't think I could have said that at all when I was younger, that there's something about this age and this time and these times we're living that is surrender, not in terms of giving up, but a faith in something larger that I don't have any, or some process, not even something, surrendering to the truth of something larger. And that's that kind of silence. And I keep looking for a new motto or a word or a gesture or something that would be helpful. But right now it's sitting in the not helpful. No, not that it's not helpful, but trying to sit in the in just whatever this is. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's almost like sitting in whatever this is, and sitting in a motto-less time in some way or another. Thank you. Okay. So if there's anybody who wants to say something last, but we'll also have time in the breakout rooms for people to share.
Right. And even at the end.
And at the end, of course. Yeah. So how about we just kind of sit for a moment and kind of take all of what's been spoken and shared and referenced and resonating and not, and just kind of See about going inside, finding your own way to get grounded and to go to that, your own inside place. And you might want to pose some questions inside that can have a chance to be elaborated in breakout times. And a question might be something like this: do I have a motto at this point in time, or a saying, or an image? Or the whispers of one that could provide a life direction or some guidance. Or some anchoring. Or do I not want to have one? Or is there one that, or is there something that served as a directional kind of saying or image or gesture pointer that in some way or another might be asking to be retired or modified? It may have come from inheritance or came from yourself, or both. So just kind of see what begins to come. Yeah, how was that for people? Anybody, if people want to share what came for them, or what was special or precious for them in the breakout conversation?
I'll say something just to say something.
Thanks,
my motto
Jim.
is be quiet, and I'm not following it. And in our group, we talked about family mottos. That sometimes your family has a motto, and it could be one that you accept or you reject or you fight with. I'll give the example in my family. It wasn't a stated motto, but it was there, and it was that whatever it is, you should be making fun of it. And that was the family motto, which meant that whoever you are, they're going to be making fun of you. So I'm fighting this model.
Mm-hmm. In the service of finding your own?
In the service of moving forward, menching forward, perhaps even.
Yeah, is that fighting, that pushing away? Thank you, Jim. I should say also that people are feel free to put in the chat if that's a better way for you to express yourself, share.
Steve, are mottos made, discovered, given, prescribed, cultivated? How do we develop that? I shouldn't call it skill, but this intention or this intentional
intentional activity that hopefully behind the model there's intentional activity. How do we come to it?
I really like the list that you were giving, and I would say yes to all of them, and that the central the central importance for me, and that came out in our group discussion, is that that wherever they come from, they the words or the images that they resonate, and that they resonate for us, and that carry meaning, even if we're not entirely sure all of the strands of the meaning that they carry for us. There's an actual felt sense of, yeah. And so I think that's so I think that our reflective processes, being listening to ourselves and being listened to, so that we can listen to ourselves if we have the intention of finding something that be core or a talisman for us in some way or another. Our focusing can help us to do that, to find our that's it's and our focusing skills. And some people may not want to have an intention that's in a shape of, so, yeah. I hope that answers in some way. At least that's my response, Sophie.
I think it's like an ongoing process that probably has a core stuff in it, or core something in it that shifts and changes and takes different shapes according to the time and the necessity, and but kind of grounds you, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think that it's impossible not to have an intention unless you're catatonic, but you might not know your intention. You might have to figure it out after the fact or during the fact. But if you have no intention, you're catatonic, can't move.
So you're saying we're always intentional. Whether it's explicit or not. Yes.
One of the
Lenore.
things, hi, one of the things we were talking about in our group was the openness to the now, and not letting the old scripts and the old intentions get in the way of who we really want to be in the present, and not letting fears and old ways of thinking, seeing them for where they are and where they really sit, rather than being open to the now, which I kind of associated a little bit, even though I don't know that much about Jen Lynn's process model, but that's what I associated it with. So we went from our old intentions and things that we were influenced by, into moving it forward to how can we open more to the now and not carry some of the old stories.
So, and possibly kind of putting the old stories to the side in some kind of way
Yeah.
in order to be present to the now or here.
Well, in Buddhism, we talk about not attaching to the narrative.
I feel grateful for this discussion and for my small group. It's enormously helpful today.
Well, Dorothy, you have a poem for us?
Yes, yes. I think Steve chose a really appropriate poem. It's called Motto by Langston Hughes. I play it cool and dig all jive. That's the reason I stay alive. My motto as I live and learn is dig and be dug in return.
That's a perfect way to segue to the rest of our day. Steve, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence 2 weeks in a row. It was really lovely to be with you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
So
Steve.
much,
Thank you.
so much has emerged. It's wonderful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank-
you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And we've dug each other.
Yeah.
Dug each other and got dug back, right?
Okay, dude.
Take care. Take
Have a
care.
good week, everyone.
Dude.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.